Good morning, everyone. This is America's Supermom. I want to thank you for this episode of Corona Chronicles Live. Thank you for joining me. I am scheduled to have a guest this morning who has not arrived yet. And if any of you know me, the show goes on anyway. So, a little bit about me as we wait for this guest, or something else came up. We never know with these things. I had a guest scheduled last week to be on, and they were in Nigeria. And needless to say, if any of you are abreast of what's going on there, they were unable to make it due to different things that were going on in their community, in their nation, and things beyond. So we want to continue to lift up prayers for that country right now as they are enduring some hardships, which those of us in America know what a lot of these ups and downs and roller coasters look like at a time when we have enough turmoil, dealing with this global pandemic. But that's something that everyone feels from every background all over the world as we face the side effects of coronavirus. So we are moving on because life does go on. We have unfortunate circumstances, but we really don't need to sit there. This is one of the reasons why I really don't watch the news because, I ask myself the question, if you are someone who feels like they need to help all the time, you need to help people. And my guest has arrived, so we will bring her on in just a few minutes. But when you feel like you want to be a helper, you have such this hole in your heart for issues that go beyond your control. You feel like, man, I just want to help. I want to do something. And many of us are in this place now, but, our hands are tied. It's out of our control. But once you recognize that, you can only control what you do and how you respond, you begin to realize that emotional roller coaster that happens when you're watching the news, it will begin to have a little leveling off ability. You'll be able to be stable. You'll be able to maintain some sort of sanity, okay, is what I say, when we begin to control the news that we hear. So that's a little bit of a tip for you guys as you embrace the news. Think about, did I have any control to stop this? We've had wildfires and all these other things that if we were in control of, they may not have happened, but we're not in control. So we can rest in that and we can move forward and do the things that we can control, which is to pray, which is to reach out to those in those areas and see if there's anything that we can do that can help them. So that's enough of me being on the soapbox. My guest has arrived. I will bring her on right now. So good to see you this morning.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Awesome. So I
I'm
wanted to.
calling you all from Israel.
Oh, from Israel. Awesome.
In the desert now, so it's nice and warm. Where are you from?
I am actually in Georgia in the United States.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm near Florida, the Carolinas and things of that nature.
Lovely.
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk to you today. Before we get into that, I want to tell everybody in the audience that we have never met before. I actually found out about Orion. Is that how you pronounce your name?
My name is in Hebrew, so it's Orion, but I don't expect anybody to switch languages in the middle of the sentence.
Okay, so Orion.
That's good, yeah.
Okay, so I actually found out about her. I went to a summit, and I believe it was Matthew Clark who did a presentation about how we can leverage our position with our profiles and things of this nature. And she was one of the testimonials or case studies that he used in his presentation. So I reached out to her through LinkedIn, and we haven't met. I just said, hey, I want to have you on the podcast, to talk about some things that you have accomplished during this time when a lot of people with their businesses are trying to navigate and stay afloat. Some of them are trying to reinvent themselves. And she is a exceptional example that he gave us. So I invited her to the show. So I am very honored that she was able to take out some time and talk with us today. So Orion, Orion,
Whatever, it works.
I'm going to come up with a nickname. How about we say Shooting Star? Okay, we're coming up with these names as we go. It was so funny. I was talking to a client last night and she was like, she does interviews also. And she says, I get so nervous. I read their bios and, I'm trying to get their name right. And I always mispronounce it. And I say, come up with a nickname. This makes you feel even closer to the person. So they know, hey, if you see someone calling you Shooting Star, you know that, hey, that's Lachelle from America. Okay. So why don't you take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about you before we get into the interview?
Okay, so I'm from Israel. I am an engineer in my training. I come from a mathematical academic family. I'm the black sheep. I did not go through my entire 9 years of advanced education. I stopped at a 6.
Oh.
So I've got my MBA, I've got my engineering degree, and I never felt like going into academia like my brother, like my father. I wanted to do stuff, build it. I worked in industry, and then I started looking for a bigger calling, I would guess. Looking at that time, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I wasn't happy with where I was. I wanted something bigger. I wanted to have more happiness in what I was doing, more success in what I was doing, more fulfillment in what I was doing. And that brought me back to studying, because that's how I grew up. You study, you learn something, you do it. Didn't work, had to keep looking. And that's how I inched my way, and a lot of turns and tribulations, until I figured out something that I really, really love. And what I do is inventory balancing. I work with e-commerce sellers, e-commerce businesses, Amazon sellers, to have better inventory. And what I do right now, my focus is, what I've realized is that small businesses, you go on this course, or you do some YouTubing, you read some books, you figure out you can get a good business on Amazon, but you don't have any business acumen. And having the business acumen, having gotten my degrees and my checkbox ticked, I know that even when you do have that acumen, running a business is so hard, and there are so many missing bits and pieces. And as I work with sellers who've already started, and they realize that it's working very nicely on the top line. I'm selling a 6-figure business, and at the end of the day, when you look at the bank account, I think it would have been better to flip hamburgers at the IHOP or the McDonald's, because they're not paying themselves. And listen, I love IHOP, I love McDonald's, and every job is respectable. I have a son who's serving ice cream right now as his job. So it's not that I'm looking down at any kind of job. It's just that if you start a business but you don't pay yourself, that nugs me like crazy. And what I do is I take them through the process of understanding the financials, figuring out how to pay yourself first, and creating a business that will sustain you, will be much more relevant to your day-to-day. I talk to people and I tell them, look, I don't care about the top line. You can be an 8-figure seller, sell for $50 million, $100 million in a year. If at the end of the year you can't take home $100,000, that's not interesting. That's not good enough. I'd rather have you selling half of that, but take home a good income.
Mm-hmm.
Not just show me a profit and the profit and loss. Most of the
Right.
profit you have in your profit and loss is already committed to something in the business. I want money in your personal bank account.
Mm.
That's where I'm at.
That is so awesome. And that's a big topic to dive into. But before we get into that, I want to ask you about your comment about being the black sheep, because many people are in this space where we didn't ask to be it, but we feel like, man, we're the black sheep. We have to, find some fulfillment right now. We're in a global pandemic. What we've known and has kept us secure is not secure anymore with our businesses, our vocation. So, for somebody who's listening, what advice would you give them about recognizing that you're not like everybody else, that there is something different, and a time when it's kind of scary to take that step to embrace that? What advice would you give them about that?
First of all, it's always scary to move away from what you've known, from that path that has been set for you. So for me, when I say I'm a black sheep, I didn't go to get my PhD. I didn't go into academia like my father and my brother. And I say it as a joke because I think it's funny to say that about somebody who's got two advanced degrees, that she's not good enough. And
Right.
there is always a, a grain of truth in those jokes when you say them about yourself. I know that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I always thought these were things that were expected from me. And the first step you need to take is to look that expectation in the eye and say, well, hello there. You're not mine. I got you in a package deal with my parents, with my neighbors, with the teacher, but I need to validate you that you are mine.
Love that.
If and I actually did that in the middle of my bachelor's degree. I've already been studying for 2 years, and one day I looked at it and I said, do you know what? I never decided
Mm.
that I want to study, and I want to study this. Let's stop for 5 minutes, an hour, reconsider, and make sure that this is the right path. I was very lucky the answer was yes.
Mhm.
But even if you've made a choice, even if you've already moved along, don't let sunk costs, all those investments you've already done, sink the ship.
I love that. That
And
was just, that was a golden nugget there, because you said you haven't decided or you need to validate the decision. I love that, because we go along with this formula, and it's kind of the same thing as your career, your vocation, dealing with these business owners. They know they want something and they ignore the signs that are there, like, yeah, you want this business, but you're not making any money, or you're not making the kind of money that people think you're making. So you're in this cycle of where you're stuck to even say, help me, I'm not making what I should be making. Because people are looking at all the growth and the things that are going on. So it's like you're creating a deeper hole for yourself. So I love that you would mention that. That is just phenomenal. And, what are some of the signs that you had that it wasn't validated? Because people kind of ignore these things. We kind of attribute it to something else. So it's like, well, you know what? I love this part, but I don't like this. So, walk us through what that looked like, that validation process, so that people can understand that's what that is, rather than them not measuring up or not being enough.
oh, it's been a long time since I did that. But what I really like to do now is something I've heard on an audiobook called Eat That Frog.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it calls Quink. Knowing what I know now.
Hmm.
So, okay, zero based thinking. Right now, if I was at the crossroad,
Mm-hmm.
Knowing everything I know now,
Mm-hmm.
that I enjoy industrial engineering, that I love solving problems, that I have trouble working with managers, they get upset with me, this and this and this and this, the good, the bad,
Right.
the ugly. Knowing all of that, would you
Mm-hmm.
still make the same decision? Would I have gone and became an engineer? Yes, I would have.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the path that lay after that was a difficult one, it had some really low lows and some exciting highs, and it wasn't what I had dreamt of. When I
Mm-hmm.
started my college degree, I was going to be a businesswoman. I was going to dress up like, you know, Crystal from Dynasty or something. That was my childhood.
Me too.
And I was going to be on the jet set, and I was going to be this big manager. I had no idea what you do as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I still don't.
Right.
but, but I had this dream, and all I saw with was the packaging. That's another big telltale, I think.
I
If
got.
all you see is the packaging and not the core, the
Mm-hmm.
heart,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a mirage.
Yes. I love that. Now that is so key. And we fall into that trap every day, following this coach or this, new thing that's coming out on this social media platform or this app. I mean, it's endless, and not really asking the questions, how is this going to serve us? We'll hear about, man, this person went viral on Twitter, but are they even in the same industry as you? I mean, do you have anything in common? We don't even do a checklist to determine, is this relevant to us? We just follow along. Hey, they made it, let me go follow them.
That is one of my biggest weakness points, and I have been training myself away from it. I would always find your best attribute and see how I fall short of that.
Right.
And many years ago now, my mother blew the switch on me, and
Mhm.
I was crying like crazy because my brother, whom I love to bits, was getting a reward at the university for his success, and I never got a reward. And I'm the little sister, and I spent my entire childhood measuring myself according to him. And my
Mhm.
mother looks at me and she says, "You know something? He's really good in the university and in his academic studies and this and that and that. But you're married, you've got kids, you've got investments, you've got this and this and this. And when you go, when you and your family plan to go abroad, I don't pick up the phone and make sure you have checklists because I know you're going to mess it up. I can trust on you. You have this and this and this already done and with the bow on it. Why don't you see
Mhm.
all those things that you have, and all you are fixated on is that he got a prize and you didn't, and you're not good enough. And it's so easy to just look and say, oh, she has better cheekbones, and oh, he has more money in the bank, and oh, they have a really nice car and I don't. But you
Right.
never look and see the rest. You never look and to see where are they falling short. And we all fall short. We all have
Right.
issues. We all have a history. And the other thing we forget to see is how hard did they work?
Right.
All the hours in the lab.
Right. Yeah.
We I do not think there is anybody in the world who woke up one morning and he was a superstar or she was a superstar.
Right. So true. That is just phenomenal because, there's opportunity cost to every decision. I call it working behind the scenes, all the time that no one is watching, while people are with their family, you may be, with your head to the nose to the grindstone working, missing that time with family or not being able to socialize with your friends because you're choosing to take this path that's not traveled by others. So I love that you would mention that. And that's something that we need to realize. Everyone thinks, oh, I have all this time. I just can use it however. But, if you do have a family such as yourself, you're sacrificing being with your kids or being with your spouse when you commit to certain things, because that commitment goes beyond just the surface things. If you want to take on a new client, well, there's a lot of hours of preparation possibly before that proposal, and then leading up to doing the job that you do. So I think that is great to recognize. So the
The
next, go ahead.
can I just add one more thing? There is
Mm-hmm.
one point of balance that I really like to use on all of these, because
Mm-hmm.
we see, oh, my friend, she lost weight, she's successful, and I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll do that, and we just overload ourselves. And my older son, he's 18. He's working at the ice cream parlor.
Mm-hmm.
He's about to join the army in a month or so. And when he was in high school, he was the second best, the second top of his class. And he came back and he said, it's really annoying me that I'm second and not first. And then he talked with some of the tutors that were working with them. He was in boarding school. And the tutor told him, do you know what's the difference between you and the guy who got to first place? He says, no. He says, you go to class, you come back to the room, you open up your books, you browse through them, 15 minutes, you're done, and you're second in your class. He goes to class, he comes up back to the room, he sits down for 3 hours straight every day, sometimes more, and he's number one. And my son looked at him and he said, I'll take number two any day, because you can't look only on one side. You have to look at your cost and at your reward. And if you put in 15 minutes and you get to be number two, you're actually way above number one, who had to put in 3-4 hours a day. Now, they're good friends. It's not about the competition between them. It's about looking at what you have achieved and how much it cost you in time, in energy, in money. And deciding and being a satisficer. Don't optimize. Trying to be the best, trying to be perfect means doing nothing. There's only one way to be really perfect. Don't do anything, you'll never mess up.
Right.
So
that's some great stuff.
creating a mindset that is very good to ourselves.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is just, that was a great example, because, your son was able to recognize that he had a choice. So instead of taking on that mindset of, man, I'm not good enough, I'm not number one, he recognized that there was something that he could do about it. And then, knowing the information, he made a choice to value the things that were important to him. Now, this is a lesson that people my age and older still haven't figured out, about being able to separate our feeling about ourselves from the outcomes, and really being able to do the things that matter. So instead of saying, man, I want to be number one, and then beating yourself up, I'm not good enough, you begin to come up with a game plan. How can I be number one? What are some things I need to do? You ask different questions. He got that answer by asking someone, the tutor, who could give him that extra insight to look at the two objectively and with the right criteria. It's nothing like measuring, just like you said, here in America, we say measuring our beginning to someone else's, being a professional. So they're a professional, you're just starting out, and you're measuring yourself up against them. There's way more experience, time, knowledge that you haven't even started with, but you're comparing each other because maybe they're approachable. You see them on Facebook, or you've went to a networking event, so they talk kind of like you. So you think, oh, I can just recreate who they are without having all the information. I mean, that was a game changer, what you just shared. So I hope people are taking notes. So the next thing I would bring up is, finding your vocation. It wasn't, I'm assuming by the way that you're talking about it, that it wasn't like, oh, being a lawyer, being a doctor, something that's readily out there. You had a different mindset to create something. And so people are in that space where all the things that are available, there is no room for creativity. And so they're feeling like something's wrong with them. They don't know how to move forward and bring to life something that's new. And I always talk about Steve Jobs or some of these other thought leaders who had the courage to stand for what their vision or their dream was, to the point of making it a reality, even when everyone else didn't understand that. So
Yeah.
that is the quality that I would say you have. So what was it that you were able to do to bring that dream, that position, that career to life during a time when everybody thought you should be going down a certain path?
That is an amazing question, and it's really, really hard to answer because it took a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and some of it happened without me even noticing. It's about being willing to learn
Mm-hmm.
and to open up and listen, and there is a lot of humility in this process. And one of the gurus that I follow is a business guru called Eli Goldratt. The man actually, unfortunately passed a few years ago. Eli Goldratt was a physicist, so he was even worse than an engineer. He was a physicist. And the man was an amazing logical thinker. And he developed a lot of tools for management per se. So it's not Tony Robbins kind of coaching. No, nothing like that. If you have a manufacturing plant, do X, Y, and Z because of 1, 2, and 3. Very, very logical based, very, very straightforward. But I loved the way he taught, and he came to everything that he did from a point of logical thinking. So he actually took what he did and expanded it to, okay, this is how you solve problems in anything in life. And he had an amazingly positive outlook on life. People are good. Every situation, every conflict can be resolved in an harmonious way. Only go for win-win situations. Nature is harmonious.
Mm-hmm.
Life might not be easy, but it's not complicated. And I started following him and studying his teachings, and I started going to the conferences. And what he did, because he was a thinker, he would develop ideas. He would go and implement them in 1 or 2 or 3 places, and then he'd let his people continue doing that. And he'd go look for something else because he's a riddle solver. He needs a new riddle all the time. He needed new riddles all the time. So he developed a lot of ideas. And I started learning all of them, and all of them made sense, and all of them were interesting. And I expanded myself through that. And I would run into the wall. I would read his books and say, oh, that makes so much sense. Let me try it. And it wouldn't work. And I gave it up, and I came back. It's a long, long, arduous process of learning to open yourself up and to take control. Listen, I'm still on in the middle of that process. I've done some stuff, and there are other things that now I want to improve. I think the way we managed ourselves in our life, my husband and I, with our kids later on, we are addicted to the truth.
I love that.
Whatever happens, we go as much as we can away from lying to ourselves, away from taking things for granted, of falling into inertia. And even though we do that dependably, planned, we still make mistakes. A few years ago, we decided to change our eating habits, and we moved into a low carb lifestyle. And we stopped baking bread. We had a bread machine at home, but we made bread every week to send to my mother-in-law. It took us 2 years to look at that machine and say, "What? Wait a minute. Why don't we move the machine to my mother-in-law's and have the girl who's taking care of her make the bread?" Okay, it's 2 hours of explaining how to use the machine to her. She's not the smartest tool in the box.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We don't have to make bread every week that we never eat.
Yeah.
That's inertia. And inertia is a huge power in our lives. It happens again and again and again and again. We call it habit. But when we formed the habit, it had a reason.
Right.
Correct, incorrect, doesn't matter. The reason goes, the habit stays.
That is good. Look, I'm gonna be over here writing a book on an index card. Normally, I do these things, and I'm like, yeah, want to keep that eye contact. Some things you got to write down. That's a game changer. So, what? Say that one more time. The reason goes, and the habit stays.
Yeah.
That's profound. That is so true.
I'll give you a very quick joke that explains it perfectly. The husband turns to his wife and he says, "Darling, you make the best hot dogs. There's just one thing I really have to ask. Why do you cut off the edges?" She says, "That's the way my mama used to do it."
Mm-hmm.
And she had the best hot dogs in the neighborhood, so that's how I do it. Mm-hmm. So he calls his mother-in-law, "Mama, the hot dogs, they're best hot dogs in the world, but why do you cut the edges?" Mm-hmm. My mama did the best hot dogs in the whole neighborhood, and she cut the edges. So he calls grandma. Mm-hmm. Grandma, and she's, in the old homes house, old people's house already. "Grandma, why do you cut the edges?" "Well, Sonny, that was the only way it could fit in the pan."
Right.
And you keep doing it generation after generation. And what we have been teaching ourselves, it happened to us. We didn't plan this. Nobody told us do this, but it just happened. As a young couple, we made the decisions on autopilot. We got married because you get married.
Right.
We bought a house because it's a good investment. And then we started, when we started thinking about becoming parents and we had the first child, we started studying because we intuitively wanted to get this right.
Right.
And as we started studying things and making decisions, not just because everybody does that, but okay, here's a decision. What do we need in order to make that decision? What is truth? We're Jewish. When we found out we are going to have a boy, the question of circumcision came up. Neither of us are very religious. Actually, we're not religious at all. Are we going to? We got married in a Jewish ritual, which is
right.
Quite chauvinistic. Mm-hmm. But we didn't even think about what kind of ritual do we want. We wanted to get married. That's the way you get married. Do it.
Right.
And then we were going to have a son. And a lot of things started coming up to us. Neither of us liked school. Both of us felt school did us bad things, harm. Mm-hmm. I have been working for over 20 years to get the school system out of me. Right. Because here I am, a smart, competent woman who can't do anything right in her life, who can't make any achievement really happen because of this pattern that I acquired in school. School was too easy for me. I didn't learn how to struggle. I didn't learn how to fail.
This is just, you are bringing some truths here. This is so true. Okay. Yeah. So you didn't
And
learn how to
so,
struggle, didn't learn that. Okay.
and
This
and
is,
and failing is a skill.
yeah.
Just the fact that
Mhm.
you can tell yourself, okay, I tried, it didn't happen. That's okay. What did I learn?
Right.
It's a skill I'm still trying to acquire. I have a hard time with failure. As
Mhm.
a kid, I had the pattern of you're bad if you fail.
Right.
And the fact that you know you have the pattern is only the first step to getting it out of you.
Right.
But you do it, and then you say, okay, for example, yesterday I had to take a day off. I was really, really, really bummed because a client said they don't want to work with me anymore.
Mhm.
And the fact that I know that's part of business doesn't mean that I feel it. So I'm kind to myself. I take a day off and then I get back to it.
Right.
But as we started studying things, we realized how much of our decisions were on autopilot and
Mhm.
how many of them were wrong.
Right.
We live a very unconventional life. My husband told me once, we do the conventional things unconventionally and the unconventional things conventionally.
Right.
My older son, did not go to first grade. He was at home in homeschooling.
Mhm.
Later, at the end of that year, it didn't work out as well as we wanted to. We went into a democratic school system, not a regular school system,
Mm.
where we felt we had more um, focus on the things that I wanted my children to pick up as they were growing.
Mhm.
Before both of them were born, we had a discussion and we said, we're not parents to the children. We're parents to the adults these children represent. And the decisions we made throughout their childhood
Mhm.
came from looking at the adult that is going to happen. And to the point where one time my younger son looked at me and said, Mom, you're really no fun. And I said, you know what, something? I love you to bits. I'm not really worried about your fun right now. You're 11 years old. I'm in charge of the 20-year-old man you will become. And it's more important to me that when you're 20 years old and you go and live on your own, you know how to wash the dishes, you know how to pay the taxes, you don't get into trouble, than that you have fun right now when you're 11. And
Right.
he gave me a hug. And he
That is
said,
so
thank you,
awesome.
Mother. So by starting to ask ourselves questions, how can we do things that we don't feel right with, like circumcising our kids? We didn't eventually.
Mhm.
Like sending them to school, to the school system, which but we both felt harmed us. We didn't.
Mhm.
We started challenging ourselves to not be so um, ingrained in the inertia that we
Right.
received. And
Mhm.
as you practice it, as you do it again and again, you learn to ask yourself the questions. You learn to challenge yourself.
Mhm.
And now
Right.
you don't have to try everything. It took me two
Right.
years to make the decision to try low carb eating. And when I
Mhm.
started it, I didn't say, oh, I found a new diet, I'm going to do it. I was
Right.
trying. So the next step in being a scientist in your life is realizing that you run experiments.
Mhm.
There, there is a process, and you try stuff out, and you figure it out. You don't have to get it right the first time.
I love that. I mean, you have given us so many nuggets, you know, that I don't think everybody can process it. I'm over here myself just like the whole concept about not learning to fail is a game changer because in my story, I struggled with depression for 13 years, was hospitalized during that time, and was raised as a high achiever in this school system or train a thought that they've given us about being the best, being in gifted classes and all this. It creates a mindset that you don't know how to struggle. Just what you said. I mean, I couldn't have said it any perfect myself, because when it came to being a mom, not just a mom to one child, two, four, five, we have 15 children. So the struggle was having this checklist, being on autopilot of what a mom is supposed to look like, and seeing that I was failing in this every day, because the checklist that I had, I wasn't accomplishing everything on the list. I didn't even know how to write a list that really was achievable, because I'm being a high achiever for something that only I can control. But I'm trying to control this list with all these people and moving parts. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I was an only child. So a lot of the chores, even just the mindset to think what things could take place in a day, was off when you're dealing with a large family. So the fact that you brought that, I mean, that just resonates with me. And that is such an eye-opening experience, because this really gives me more depth and understanding about why I was in that place of depression, why things were working the way they were. And it's a no-brainer, it's a logical thing. You didn't know how to handle that failure, because I didn't experience that.
Yeah. So for me, the one thing that got me through motherhood, and I've got two crazy smart boys
Mm-hmm.
um, who did challenge us to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two things. One is I came to motherhood accidentally very prepared, because I was ingrained in my husband's family many years before we got married, and I helped with his nephews and nieces, and I
Mm-hmm.
was around little kids for a long time before I became a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of relaxed me a bit. And the other thing was, and again, this happened accidentally, when my firstborn was stopped being something that cries and sleeps and started having a personality.
Mm-hmm.
I eventually came to the conclusion, actually quite quickly came to the conclusion, I will always mess it up the first time. So I never asked myself to get the first time right. And I'm talking about, you're in the middle of the supermarket and he blows his top, or it's
Mm-hmm.
3 a.m. in the morning. You just fell asleep, or at least that's what it feels like. And now he's
Right.
crying. And my rule of the thumb was, if I'm shooting from the hip, all I have to do is not hit myself right now. Then when tomorrow comes, when we're back home, when I can let my husband, his father, or the girl who's babysitting him, have him and take 10 minutes to myself, it's time to rehash the scenario and figure
Right.
out what was the right thing to do.
Right.
And so I remember this very distinctly about getting a bottle in the middle of the night. I think he was feverish for a few days, and he got a water bottle with a painkiller that tastes like juice. So the fever went down, no need for juice in the middle of the night, but now he's accustomed to this really nice thing. You can get up at 3 a.m. in the morning and get some juice.
Right.
So he wakes up at 3 a.m. in the morning, juice. All I want to do is go back to sleep. I've got work in the morning. Give him some juice, go back to bed. Next day, after I get back from work, or maybe it was lunchtime, rehash the entire thing. I said, he wants attention. This is a really great way to get this kind of cuddly feeling of attention. Next night when he wakes up, I say, there is no juice in night. You can get water or a hug, or both.
Mm-hmm.
He chose water and he didn't get up anymore. That's it. Back to full night sleeps.
Wow.
Because
I
you have to be kind to yourself.
so true. And I think, you're mentioning though that time to think, that desire to think, right? The desire to look outside of yourself. This
Mm-hmm.
is the thing that's a game changer, because instead of that conversation, a lot of people are like, I'm not doing it right as a mom. This is not working. I'm up in the middle of the night. I'm not getting any sleep. And we don't really take these isolated incidences and evaluate them. We don't have the bandwidth because we're so busy watching social media, watching these Lifetime movies of these perfect families and everybody getting it right, looking at their highlight reels, that we, just like you said, we don't know struggle. We don't know the real thing behind the selfie that has been taken a million times before it's posted. We only see the good things. So when the bad things happen, we internalize that and think something's wrong with us because we're not getting it right. But these people on social media or on TV or whatever are always getting it right.
Totally.
Yeah, I hope y'all are taking notes, because that is some good stuff there. Totally off topic of what we were even thinking about talking about, but I think the most important topics came to light because this really was so eye opening for me. And I really appreciate your transparency, because especially now when we're in a place where people are really revisiting what their values are, their core beliefs, and you feel isolated because this may be something that resonates with you, but you just don't have the courage to stand with it, you know. And I love what you say about being addicted to the truth, and I liken that to my relationship with my husband, because we did those non-traditional things. Having a family of 15, that all alone was crazy. We don't have like that everyday example. When we met in college and we're both on a career path, and we choose for me to stay home, even though I was educated in business and, from a prestigious school. I mean, that was crazy. People are like, what? All that education going down the drain and staying home because we didn't
No,
have,
it's not.
you know what I mean? But the thought process between staying home and having a career, it's like you had to choose. You couldn't do both, so
Mhm.
so many different analogies that you have given us today, and definitely opportunities for people to really explore and do that inner work that helps them to be a better version of themselves. So what do you do in your daily routine? I mean, I'm going to let this be the last question. We're just going to have another part two, three, four, five. Okay. But what do you
Yeah,
do
I'm
in your,
enjoying this.
yes, what do you do in your routine that keeps you in this space of being addicted to truth? Because, so many people take the easy way, the way that looks like it's not a conflict, or, everything fits
I
in a
love,
box. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. One thing is that I am never ashamed to ask a question. It doesn't matter how silly it might feel to you. You're never silly for asking a question. If you don't understand and you don't ask, you'll stay not understanding.
Mhm.
And that goes for asking for help, and that goes for asking for permission.
Mm.
When my kids were younger, I like bringing this example up. They would always assume I'm going to say no to everything, and so they would go and try to do it in secret so I don't find out. And I would always find out. I don't know what kind of genes I have, but I would always figure them out.
Mhm.
And I would always say, if you knew I was going to say no, why did you do it? But if you do it, why not ask me for permission? You already know I'm going to say no. So you've got the no you've got in your pocket. Now
Mhm.
there's a small chance that I might say yes, and you'll get into zero trouble because you asked me and you got a yes. You didn't ask me and you did it, you'll get into some trouble. You didn't ask me, no, you asked me, you got to know, and you did it, that's trouble, yes. But you didn't ask me and you were trying to hide it from me, that's a lie. And a lie is the deepest kind of trouble you can get into in our family. So ask. And I said it so many times, they started believing me and they started doing it. And then one day we were at a supermarket, not in Israel even, I think. I know, we were abroad. And my son and I were discussing something. We wanted to go to the bathroom or whatever. I don't recall what it was that we wanted it. But it wasn't where's the milk or where's the chocolate. It was something else. And suddenly he turns around and leaves me. And I call after him, where are you going? And he says, I'm going to ask. And I'm like, why? He says, because if I don't ask, they won't say yes. And I'm like, I taught him that and I don't do it. It's time to practice what I preach.
Yes.
So if you have children and you raise them in this light of truth, and there are several parts of it. One, don't lie, ever. There is no do as I do, don't do as I say, unless you look them in the eye and you tell them, guys, if we go for do as I do, don't do as I say, you can't be better than me. I want for you to be better than me. That's why I'm asking you to do stuff I can't do yet. Because you deserve more. You do that. It goes by very well. But don't lie to them. Don't be ashamed of any topic. If you sit down your children and you talk to them about sex in day-to-day terms, it's not the birds and the bees and you force yourself. You feel like dying. Look, I know it's embarrassing. I wasn't raised talking about what is acceptable for boys to do with girls at what age.
Right.
But I came into the discussion saying, I'm going to make this happen now. And just act like I'm not embarrassed.
Right. Done that many a times, okay?
And you talk about it first. Because you want to set a standard where mom and dad aren't afraid of talking about hard stuff.
So true.
And eventually you'll get young adults in the house that take no BS from you. They ask hard questions. They make interesting conversation. They bring up amazing points of view, and they will just take you the rest of the way. And this is my last point about parenting. And I think it's true in other places in our life, but I did it for parenting. And this is small investments, pay big and pay fast. If you're lazy today and you let your kid eat his cereal on the carpet in the living room and make a mess and not clean up because you're just so tired, and then tomorrow you do it again because yesterday you did it and you don't want to get into a confrontation, and you don't want to get into a confrontation, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the problem becomes massive, and then it's so hard to handle. But if instead you put the line, you put your limits, and you are willing to pay the price. You pay once.
That's.
And I have 2 boys that never, ever in their lives threw a tantrum in a supermarket. And they're not good boys. You know, they're not like the tied up, very, very well-behaved boys. They would climb on anything. They would run away from me, all kinds of stuff. But they never threw a tantrum.
Yeah.
And I would go, and when I just started taking them to the supermarket, I was so ready. This is what I'll do, and this is what I'll do. And at the end of the shopping spree, the shopping trip, it's like, I have a child here, and nobody screamed lollipop, and nobody screamed chocolate, and nothing came into my cart that wasn't supposed to be there. What am I doing now? Eventually I turned to them and said, so do you want a little treat? And they said, can we have a bun and some chocolate milk? And that's it. That's their treat when we go to the supermarket all their lives. That's the highlight of their trip, a bun and some chocolate milk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I did something right.
Amen. That is just awesome. That is awesome. I mean, yeah, this
But
was,
the thing behind this, and if anybody here who's a parent is listening, is
mhm.
never let them call your bluff. Be willing to stand behind what you say.
I love that. And, with that is doing the thing that you're committed to. So often we say things out of frustration, or we allow that emotion to control us rather than us maintaining the discipline and the control to see beyond this temporary situation. So, just like you said, in the example of letting your kid eat cereal in the living room floor, if that's not something you value, why are you letting that happen? Because we can stop ourselves by asking ourselves, yeah, you're tired, but be tired for the right things. That's just like, I know if I've had enough of this computer or a Zoom call, I'm tired of that. I'm not tired of my family or my work ethic or whatever. It's just, it's time for this to be closed down. And once you recognize that, you don't have that transfer of anger or resentment to other people and things that don't deserve it. That just really was a good one too. This has just been wonderful. I can
Totally.
stay here all day. Okay, you're speaking my language, girl. I want to just go run and do some cartwheels because that, really resonated with me about not knowing how to struggle and fail. I mean, I that's just a game changer for me. So who would have thought us having a conversation about business would lead to parenting to a revelation for myself? I'm just like,
Everything leads to parenting with me.
yes, I love it. So in conclusion, what is the best way for the audience to get a hold of you? And
Well,
yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook.
Mhm.
So that is the easiest way. I check everything.
Okay.
That's
And
my name, Orion Avidan.
yes. Shooting star. That's what I say. She definitely is a shooting star. I'm so glad that that name came up. It's so appropriate
Thank
because,
you.
here it's about isn't that like one of the constellations or something? Yeah, so it's isn't God good? I'm just all about the signs, but this has just been amazing, and definitely we are going to come back and we're going to be able to share with the audience more insight about your business, different practices, because if you can illustrate your logic and understanding and fortitude with parenting, business is a shoe in. I mean, that just we definitely parenting is the hardest job we have. Okay, so if you can do that, hey, everything else we know you are a superstar. So,
Thank you.
what last words would you like to share with the audience today?
Well, when we started, you said that the situation, the COVID
Mm-hmm.
19, is putting people in a tailspin, and we all have those happen to us at one time or another. For me, I'm a homebody. All this didn't do much to change anything in my life. I was working from home before. Nothing really happened. I just stay at home a little bit more. It's not a big difference for me. But what happened is that we got this kind of collective attention to the fact that events happen, life surprises us, and it happens to each one of us separately throughout our lives. It's big things, little things, good things, bad things. A couple of months ago, somebody stole my bag broke the car window and stole my bag. That could put somebody into a tailspin completely.
Yes.
So it's not that big a change to have something happen. It's just very unique that it's happening to all the world at the same time. And I think it's a really good chance for us to realize that we need to be a little less fragile, to be to look for ways where we can balance ourselves. And I was thinking about this just today. Somebody told me, think of your life like a the ride in the fun park.
Okay. Roller
What
coaster.
the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
It's you go up and you go down, but you know you have the lane, a baseline
Right.
to stop you. You're not going to go down forever. There is a baseline there, and we all need to find a baseline, an activity that we do twice a week, a person, a habit, that whenever things start going nuts around us, whenever things start spinning around us, we can remember, but I have my baseline.
Right.
Whether it's I go to do my, it's part of an activity I did. I can't find my baseline yet. I didn't find my baseline. But one of the girls said, I go twice a week, rain or shine, good or bad, I go twice a week to do my ballroom dancing training. That's my baseline.
Mm-hmm.
It's a point where your life comes back to ground.
Right.
Okay, everything is okay. I can get off the ride soon.
Right.
Another one decided that he's going to have a certain amount of tutoring he does each week so that he knows he's grounded. He will always have enough income to cover his basic costs. You need to have some kind of grounding. And I'm just now looking for my grounding.
We all are. And that's just, then if you're always learning, which it sounds like you and I have a lot in common like that, that baseline is going to change. You may feel that baseline is this today, but I love how you put it, addicted to truth. The more you learn and find out and question why, how, and ask those not superficial questions. You're willing to put some skin in the game and ask the questions that are going to matter so that you can make a decision. This can help people with procrastination. You're going around in circles, but if you ask the right question, you can get an answer and then decide if you want to follow that path or not, or do that thing, that next thing you're thinking about. So, like I said, you have given us so many nuggets of wisdom. I'm over here. I'm just so full. Like I've just known you for years and I just love it. I
And I'm
can't
just like, it's just simple little old me. I've no, I don't, and this is
yeah.
one thing. So I'm just going to add this
Hmm.
because before I went off in a totally different trajectory, you said a lot of people are thinking, but I have nothing to give. I'm not special. Well, that's me when I sat down here and put up the video starting to talk. For me, those things are extremely common. They're day to day. And remember, you always have a gift. And for you, that gift is just you.
Yeah. Well, and I think even the element of being able to be transparent, there's so many things that we are hiding behind. That was my story. It was like, this mask of pretending like you have it all together, or people seeing me with my children out in public. Oh, they're so well behaved or whatever, but I'm unfulfilled. I'm like, man, I'm doing that part right for whatever they know how to act out in public, but why is it that I still have this thing where I feel like I'm a failure and people are telling me I'm doing it right? I mean, something wasn't in alignment, but I think the element that I really appreciate is when you are on this journey of being addicted to truth, you don't seek that validation from things that really don't need to be validated. Um, who cares? Like, we can share about parenting, Because, are we trying to reach the same goal? We will begin to determine if that course of thought even needs to be validated, if it's even worth exploring when people begin to kind of talk and tell what their values and beliefs are. That's what separates us. And it's not anything personal, but we haven't even learned something like that. So instead of saying, oh, you know what, that's interesting, finding out what is it that you think is interesting. Is it the way that they discipline, how they form habits, or whatever? But we don't explore those because we're so busy comparing, you know, oh, she does it this way, so that way's wrong. So anything else she says, she doesn't know what she's talking about. You see what I'm saying? So this has just been wonderful. We're going to have you come back, and sooner than later, because I'm so excited. But again, I want to thank you so much for your time and all of your just transparency, vulnerability, everything. I mean, it really made an impact in my life today. And I just, giving you virtual hugs, okay? And this is just a blessing. So thanks so much for coming on today, okay?
It was extremely enjoyable and fulfilling for me as well.
Oh, well, you guys, we want to thank you all for watching. And I tell you, you got to reach out. You never know who is going to resonate with you, who is going to speak your language. Many times as entrepreneurs, we feel like we're alone. We're doing this work to the grindstone. Nobody understands us or whatever, but reach out, continue to keep reaching out. There's a reason for people to come on your radar for whatever reason, and follow that through. Don't just discount it. Always be willing to learn, to listen, and ask questions. So thank you so much, Shooting Star, for being here today. Loving you. And you guys take notes. I'm telling you, go back and watch this again. There are so many nuggets. I'm telling you, we could write a couple books over the things that she shared with us today. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we will see you guys the next time. Thanks again.